Okay, Algebra Quarter 3, Test 2A, Relearn Packet. It says pre-learn, sorry about that. It's because I took the structure from an old pre-learn packet. All right, I didn't write out everything you're supposed to do every single time like I normally do, but here's the deal. For each section, and there are 4 sections that you need to do, I am going to do part 1, you do part 2, show me, when I do part 1, you do it with me, we do it along together. Then you do part 2, show me the answers to part 2, let me make sure you're getting it right, then you finish up part 3. Okay, so without any further ado, let's take a look at part 1, and part 1 is all about factoring, such an important skill, not only for this class and for this Regents, but also for somewhat next year in geometry, and then boy oh boy in Algebra 2 Trig, you do a ton of factoring. You cannot survive Algebra 2 Trig without being great at factoring. So you're helping the next 3 years of your mathematical career, and then if you take math after that, tons of factoring as well. All right, so number 1 says to factor n squared plus 5n minus 36. And when we go to factor, we want to use the AM method. And that means we got to add up to the middle term, multiply out to the last term. Now, there's 2 ways we can do this. 3 ways. We can do it mentally, we could write it down, or we can use the calculator. And what do I mean it? Well, you always start with how to multiply because it eliminates the choices much more quickly. I could do negative 36 times positive 1. I could do 36 times negative 1. I could do negative 18 times 2. I could do 18 times negative 2. I could do negative 12 times 3, or I could do 12 times negative 3. I could do negative 9 times 4, or I could do 9 times negative 4, and I could do negative 6 times 6, and that works the same either way. So which one of those combinations adds to a positive 5? And the answer is positive 9, negative 4. So we get n plus 9 times n minus 4. Now, what if you're not great at multiplication factors, or you can't find the factors of 36 or negative 36 easily? You go to your calculator, you type in y equals, and then you're going to do negative 36, whatever the last term is here, divided by x. And then go to table, and it'll show you all the factors. If you really have a hard time with this, on the extra help on demand, there's a whole section about factoring, and it'll go into greater detail than I just did. Likewise, for factoring a squared plus 10a plus 16, I'm going to think what multiplies out to 16, positive 16, and adds up to a positive 10, and that is positive 8 and positive 2. You can use the same process above, but again, we're getting to the point where I shouldn't have to talk too much about how to factor anymore, and you should go and watch that extra help on demand video all about factoring. Now, factor completely. Completely, which is for next numbers 4 and 5, always means 2 steps. So when you see factor completely, it's really telling you you're going to have to use 2 steps. So each of the next 2 questions are going to use 2 steps. For number 4, they share a 2 in common. So we're going to factor out that 2, and I get b squared minus 3b plus 2. Then I factor the resulting quadratic using AM, just like before, and I get 2 times b minus 2 times b minus 1. That's my correct answer to number 4. Now, number 5 is one of the most difficult types of factoring, and I've seen it on the Regents exam already. This was something you might see in an 11th grade Regents years ago, and now they're putting it on our test. Whenever I have 2 terms, the minus in between, I start thinking to myself, is this the difference of 2 perfect squares? If it's not, I'm in a lot of trouble. But it is the difference of 2 perfect squares. And I also, by the way, looked for a common factor. There was none. So I square root both of them, and I'm going to get x squared plus 4y squared and x squared minus 4y squared. And then I look and I say, well, I can't do anything with this guy on the left because it's the sum of 2 perfect squares, sum meaning to add, and I can't add up and get that. There is no way to factor the sum of 2 perfect squares. But look, I have another difference of 2 perfect squares here, so I can do it again. And I'm going to get x plus 2y and x minus 2y. Now, a number of kids wrote this in the answer space to number 5. They wrote x plus 2y, x minus 2y. and they didn't write anything before it, but this is still one of the factors. It just doesn't get up and disappear. X squared plus 4y squared. I need all three of those things in the space. When it comes to factoring completely, you're always going to have at least three terms in the space. Now we get to number 6. And number 6 is one where we're going to look to see if there's a common factor, but the answer is no, there's not. So that means I'm going to go to plan B. Multiply by 3, I get x squared plus x minus 6. Factor that, x plus 3 times x minus 2, again for the third or fourth time. If you have difficulty with factoring, go to the extra help on demand video on factoring. Now in this plan B type of factoring, when I multiply by 3 at the end here, I have unbalanced the trinomial. It's not the same question anymore, so I have factored something that's different. But to balance it back out, since I multiplied by 3 before, I now need to divide by 3. And I get x plus 1 times 3x minus 2. And those are my factors. X plus 1 times 3x minus 2. So listen, factoring is fundamental to success, not only in this course, not only on the Regents exam, but for future math as well. You really have to learn how to do this. Now, if you would have learned it way back when, all of these factoring questions on all of these tests would have been easy for you. You have actually created more work for yourself. By refusing to do a little more work back in the day, you've done a lot more work since then. So let's get started on this and really truly learn how to factor.